Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another dose of daily Amonkhet spoilers. And today, we don't really have that many cards to talk about. However, we have a new Planeswalker, and oh my god, is this card insane. I am so scared of Gideon of the Trials. So, you thought that getting beat down with a 5/5 indestructible Gideon for 4 mana was rough? Well, how about a 4/4 indestructible Gideon for only 3 mana? So, 3 mana comes in with 3 loyalty. You can plus it to protect Gideon. You prevent all damage and permanent with heal, so that stops Planeswalkers, that stops creatures to help keep your Gideon alive. You can also zero Gideon to get an emblem that says as long as you control a Gideon Planeswalker, you can't lose the game and your opponent can't win the game. It's like a worship almost on a Gideon. Of course, you got to keep a Gideon around, which may or may not be tricky. Works well with some of the older Gideons, like Gideon Jura, which has so much loyalty. But this one does die to only 3 damage until it gets plussed a few times. But the big thing is, it's a 4/4 indestructible attacker that all damage is prevented to for only 3 mana, so it is just such a fast, aggressive clock. It's like Gideon Ally of Zendikar on steroids, and I think that's probably the big question and comparison for this card. So that's the thing. If you look back at the rotation of Standard and how things were supposed to be, Battle for Zendikar would be rotating when Amonkhet came into the format. So I think the initial idea of Gideon of the Trials was to be the replacement for Gideon Ally of Zendikar. But now, because they switched back rotation schedule, nothing changes till the fall, both cards are in the format at the same time. So the big question is, which Gideon do you play? I don't know if you can play all of them, because you can only have one Gideon Planeswalker on the battlefield, so you can't actually curve them into each other. So that's kind of the question, and I don't really know the answer. I do think that Gideon of the Trials is pretty close to Gideon Ally of Zendikar in terms of power level. Of course, you don't get the creature tokens, but a 4/4 beater for 3, it's like a Fleecemane Lion that's already monstrous for 3 mana, when Fleecemane Lion costs you a total of 7 mana, of course split over 2 turns, but it's just so strong. So that's going to be the big question in Standard immediately. Over the long term, Gideon will rotate, Ally of Zendikar, I mean, and Gideon of the Trials will definitely see play then, but I think there's an argument that some decks are going to play new Gideon over old Gideon right away. So this is the next in a long line of 3 mana Planeswalkers, and if there's one thing we've learned over the years, it's don't underestimate 3 mana Planeswalkers. Just being 3 mana and being a Planeswalker almost always makes a card somewhere between insanely powerful, like Liliana of the Veil, and very good, like Jace Beleren and Ashiok and Saheeli Rai, which was pretty bad, but now it's insane. So being 3 mana is a really big deal for Planeswalkers. In Standard, I think the biggest thing is that the card has an obvious home. You can just slot this right into Mardu vehicles. Like I said, the question is, do you play this over Gideon Ally of Zendikar? I don't know the answer yet. You may not. Being less mana is certainly nice, but you have an obvious home. Mardu is one of the most played decks in the format, and you can easily just play Gideon of the Trials in this deck. Whether or not new decks develop will depend on the Standard format. Is Heartacuring going to stick around? Is there going to be any bannings? We'll have to wait and see if things get shaken up, but at least you can consider playing Gideon there. And in older formats, things are really scary because at 3 mana, you can play Gideon on turn 2 pretty easily. There's so many mana dorks like Noble Hierarch and Burns of Paradise, and some Legacy players have been talking about how Gideon might even be playable there because it just hoses some decks right away. Like Storm isn't going to be able to beat a Gideon emblem in game 1. So if you play a mana dork into a Gideon on turn 2 and just make an emblem, your opponent just scoops up the game in game 1, so it might require decks to rebuild if it starts to catch on in the Legacy format. The other thing is, this card makes me really hope that Wizards, please Wizards, give us a Planeswalker hate in Standard. I can't overstate how scared I am of this card. Like, it really is scarier than Gideon Ally of Zendikar just because it comes down so quickly. So I hope that maybe we'll get a Pithing Needle or a Hero's Downfall or something to deal with these powerful Planeswalkers, because if we don't, it's going to be a long couple years of getting beaten down by 3 mana Gideon. As far as the other cards we got, nothing super insane, mostly commons and uncommons, although it is worth talking about Watcher of the Dead. So Watcher of the Dead is graveyard hate, sort of. So it's a 2-mana 2/2, which is fine, kind of hate bear stats. It's colorless, so any deck can play it. You can exile it, and each opponent chooses 2 cards in his or her graveyard and exiles the rest. So this is a start. We've been saying we need more graveyard hate and more answers in Standard, and this is a step in that direction. It's not a great step, though, because it doesn't really deal with the most important things in the graveyard. Like, yeah, you can get rid of some of Scrapheap Scrounger's food, but the Scrapheap Scrounger is still going to be there. You can get rid of a bunch of cards from Black-Green Delirium, but if they have a Walking Ballista and one of the new Aftermath cards, they can still have Delirium with just 2 cards. So it's a pretty watered-down version of graveyard hate, especially since your opponent gets to choose. If the choosing was flipped and you got to exile all cards except 2 from your opponent's graveyard, then I would be much more excited about it. That said, it is a safety valve to some extent, and if we have a Rally the Ancestors type build that's looking to go big with the graveyard instead of just play a few specific things, then I think this is a very good answer. And even as it is, it does put a bit of a damper, and it's on a fairly competitively costed body, so it's a step in the right direction. I'm very thankful we have it. I'm not sure it's enough of a step, but hopefully it's the first step towards more answers in Standard. Finally, wrapping things up, we have some commons and uncommons. We have the Cartouche cycle fully revealed, and these cards are not really playable on their own. The benefit they give is pretty small. However, I think there's potential here for a really fun janky deck because of how they interact with all the trials. So I don't think this will be competitive by any means, but I definitely think we could build 5-color trials / cartouches and build a deck like that for Against the Odds or maybe Budget Magic, definitely for Kitchen Table, and I think it would be a lot of fun. Just play all these enchantments, get their effect, bounce them back to your hand, do it again. So it seems like a really fun deck. Obviously, it's not going to beat 4-color Copycat, it's not going to beat Mardu Vehicles, probably not even going to beat the Tier 2, Tier 3 decks in Standard, which themselves can't beat Mardu Vehicles in 4-color Copycat, but it's really fun, and I like these sub-themes because it gives casual players, Against the Odds players, people that don't really care about winning a GP or an SCG Open, something really unique and fun to do. So I think it's a win on that level. Last but not least, a couple of limited things. Floodwaters, it bounces some stuff, also cycles. Painful Lessons, it's a Scumble 2 Temptation. Anyway, that's our Daily Amonkhet spoilers for today. So let me know in the comments, what do you think? Is Gideon as busted as it looks? Are you going to play this over Ally of Zendikar? Does it have to wait for rotation? If you're a Modern or Legacy player, does this have potential in your format? Am I overrating this? Because like I said, I'm super scared of this card. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.